let's talk about immigration, because we've hit a new high score. Don't we love high scores? We love winning. We're doing so great.
Line go up.
Yeah, the line goes up. So immigration basically is just way beyond most people's understanding. When polled, people think net immigration is somewhere like 60 to 70,000 people a year. They just don't know just how bad things are. And so this is from the Office of National Statistics. I thought we'd just go through just how high the numbers are. So in the year ending December 2023, they revised up their provisional estimate of the number, just the raw number of people who have come in, to 1.2 million, which is 1,218,000, which is down slightly from December 2022, which is 1,257,000. So it's 2.5 million people in 2 years. That's mad. It's absolutely mad.
You can see it as well.
Yeah. This is mostly non-EU nationals. For example, last year, 250,000 Indians, 140,000 Nigerians, 90,000 Chinese, 83,000 Pakistanis, 36,000 Zimbabweans. And this is just a curve that goes straight up. So huge numbers that come in, and people can genuinely see it in the streets. You also have a large number of people emigrating. And interestingly, the non-EU emigration is going up as well. So, and I've had conversations with taxi drivers that they've given me like barometers on this. And I had a conversation with one taxi driver who was like, my brother owns a house in India and he's thinking about selling it. And I told him, don't bother. I was like, oh, why is that? He's like, because this country's going downhill. He's going to want to go back there at some point. And I imagine that a lot of people share that opinion, which is unfortunately true. But the net emigration last year was 532,000, which is an awful lot. But it's just a drop in the bucket compared to the number more than twice coming in. So the net is nearly 700,000 out coming in. And, most of it's non-EU nationals. But there are one of the questions everyone asks is, well, is it British people leaving? It's like, no, actually, it's not. It's about 80,000 Brits a year who emigrate, but also about 80,000 who come back as well, interestingly enough. So that's not terrible. But part 6 in this, I've got the wrong one. I'm still pressing the wrong one. No. You'd think I'd know what I'm doing when after... Right. I'm just going to use that.
There we go.
There we go. Right. So part 6 in this is the numbers, right? So this is the revised numbers. So they revised those numbers and said, actually, it was more than we thought. Another 58,000 on top came in, and 10,000 fewer left. And so the net migration has gone up by 68,000 to 740,000 last year net, which you would think, oh, well, that's a record. No, actually, they revised the 2022 figures as well, so that went up to 764,000 net.
Well, there's a net outflow of 10,000 Brits as well. And then if you add...
Yeah. No, that's non-EU migration.
Oh,
so that was
right.
Fewer non-EU migrants left than expected. So more of them are staying, less of them are going.
Right.
And so the actual record was in 2022, which was 764,000 net migration. Last year was 740,000 net migration. Amazing. And so the Migration Observatory talked about this. Why is this skipping over the one
there we go.
Get to? Yeah,
I've got it.
But so the Migration Observatory at Oxford are doing superb work on this. And they point out that it is slightly down, but not by much. And the main contributions to the decline were the lower immigration on humanitarian visas. So fewer Ukrainians and Hong Kongers came.
And Afghans as well.
And Afghans, yeah. And there were fewer non-EU students. So it's like, okay, great. And so we've got a breakdown. Well, it's doing 2 for some reason on my one. I don't know why. Right. So we've got the breakdown from the government themselves. And it's encapsulated in this graph. And you just look at this graph and you realize this is madness. It's sheer madness, right? So visitor visa granted, as in people who are coming on holiday or just temporarily coming to the country for whatever reason, business, 2 million. Okay, fine, because they're here for a few weeks, they go home. Don't worry about those, right? So it's the rest of it that's crazy. So you've got 605,000 work visas, 562,000 study visas and 79,000 family visas. This is the overwhelming bulk. But look at the bottom there, 756,000 extensions of stay and 129,000 settlements. So they're people who are already here that are just being allowed to stay here for longer.
I mean, it's worth saying that in theory, people who come in as students should go out. And in theory, we had a pandemic which cut off immigration, and therefore you might have a surge and then you would expect it to decline. The problem is, in practice, almost every time there's been a prediction of decline, we've had the opposite. And so no one really believes this anymore. And until we see substantial declines in net migration, I think people are right to be skeptical. The other thing I will say is this surge has happened in Canada, Australia, Ireland, other places. And so it's happening across the Anglosphere, and it's roiling politics. Canada, for the first time, we are now getting a proper debate. Everybody is agreeing immigration is too high. That has never existed in Canadian history.
But isn't something like a third of Canada's population immigrant now?
It's not. It's about it's probably in the 20s, like Australia. It's
only in the 20s. Only a quarter, not a third. Sorry, but that's crazy.
It is.
The
crazy.
previous highest number, which I think you've written about in White Shift, was about 15% in the early sort of like Ellis Island era.
Yeah, in the U.S. Yes, US. I mean the U.S. is because it's much larger. Immigration is actually it's a smaller share of its pop. It's now up to 14-15%, but it's not. Like Australia and Canada, it's like maybe in the low to mid 20%. Switzerland is probably, in the 30s. The smaller the country, generally the higher the foreign-born share, all other things being equal.
And the more noticeable it is as well, because I mean, another thing that America has an advantage of over us in particular is they've got an incorporative ideology. They've got a set of rules. You can come here, do these things, wave a flag, and be an American. We don't really have that. We're just like we're a bunch of ancient tribes on an island. We didn't expect to have millions of people from everywhere in the world come and visit us. Like, sorry, what are we supposed to do with this?
Even then, America does have sort of ethno-religious underpinnings.
I'm not saying it doesn't.
The waspishness.
I think that's always been a bit of a myth, and a lot of it was recently invented.
I'm not saying that it's been a long-term permanent thing, but at least they have something, right? And I'm not saying it's a guaranteed
right.
checked integration or anything like that, but at least they've got a national narrative that they can wheel out to the new arrival and say, okay, well, look, just grab a beer, grab an American flag, at least we'll have a conversation. We don't have that. What are we supposed to say to these people? It's like, I don't know, get a picture of the Queen. I don't have a picture.
Biscuit tin nationalism.
Yeah, exactly. What are we?
Well, a lot of it's implicit, right? I mean, it's kind of had to happen under the radar, but there's no explicit, British dream the way there's an American dream, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we should be demanding they come to the pub or something.
Right?
Yeah. It's like, no, you've got to come to the
Mashallah.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have a choice. Get a Coke if you have to, but anyway. So I thought we'd go through just some of the numbers just more granularly, because again, the numbers themselves belie the problem. They conceal the problem, right? So, for example, the 562,000 studies, well, the extensions of stay are mostly for students. So, okay, the students aren't just, because you think, hey, they're here for 3 years and then they leave. No, they have 3 years and then they keep staying. And so now another 500,000 have come in and they're going to get an extension. So the problem keeps building up. And so you say, okay, but we need the 600,000 people to do work, right? No, we don't actually, because out of those, only 305,000 were actually work visas. 290,000 of them are dependents. So we're allowing them to bring dependents, and the students get to bring family, and then we just add 79,000 for just bring your family anyway. It's great. And it's just like, this is crazy. So if you look at the number of people, let's assume that the students are taking loans and things like that. So they're shouldering their own burden, right? Financially. Well, still half of the work visas are people who are not paying into the system.
You don't pay your student loan back until you start earning 25 grand as well.
That is true.
So if you're on the Deliveroo economy, which a large portion of Indian and Bangladeshi and Sri Lankan ones are, because they'll just sign on to a degree, get the student visa, drop out and get the little learner plate moped. Same with the health and social care visa. As Miriam Cates got up and said, in 2022 to 2023, 70,000 of those are issued and only 11,000 vacancies were filled by the end of the year. Right. So they've signed up and done it and then just gone, no thanks.
Yeah. And then they're just somewhere in the country and we can't track them, we can't do anything about them. And so that's kind of mad, isn't it? So, because we got 600,000 people coming here to work. No, we don't. We've got 300,000 people, assuming that they all work. Because, they get access to the benefit system like anyone else. So, what are we going to do about it? They say, we need it for the NHS. Like, maybe we only have 100,000, 118,000 grants that are given to health and care visas. So out of the 1.2 million who are coming, less than 10% of them are coming for the NHS. So, okay, well, I mean, if the argument is the NHS needs them, okay, I'm happy to buy into it. 90% of the immigration can go away then. That's what we're saying. Because that was your concern. Oh, well, it's about safe and legal humanitarian routes. Okay, that's 96,000. Now we're down to 200,000. So now we've got a net outflow of minus 300,000, if that's what you're saying, you know.
But of course, a lot of this is officials' hands being tied by courts and a very expansive judicial interpretations of human rights conventions, whereas in most of the world, they just ignore this stuff. They're signed up, but they ignore it. Whereas in Britain, the judges just run with it, right?
But then they're not even the problem. That's the thing. Yeah. So let's assume we took all of the 100,000 boat migrants, we took the 100,000 humanitarian migrants, we took any other sort of these categories. We'd still be in a net outflow of hundreds of thousands a year of just people leaving of their own volition. Right, it's really the government rubber stamping visas. Like they must.
But all this family reunification stuff is tied into these rights frameworks, right?
Yeah,
so that's where the rights frameworks are pushing against saying no to dependence, and that's one of the big problems. Is we have to sort of get independence from these very sort of liberal interpretations of these rights frameworks that are international.
100%. And I mean, you saw it in the debate the other day on ITV, where the Scottish National chap was like, well, of course, if a student comes over, he should bring his family. And France was like, no. Why would you think that? I don't, when I went to university, I didn't take my family with me. Obviously I left my mum and dad at home. It's weird that they want to bring their families. It's weird. And so this is the reason why the country feels like it's full to bursting. I mean, Farage has been making this point. Look, the traffic on the roads is crazy. You can't get a doctor's appointment. You can't get a dentist appointment. You probably can't afford a house in London.
The trains are appalling.
The trains are just packed all the time. The infrastructure can't handle it. And yet, every year, the Conservatives allow millions of people to come in. And so you might be like, okay, well, how many are they deporting? Forced returns for last year had gone up by 70%. That sounds good. Sounds promising. That sounds. I like large percentages. Up to 7,000. 7,000.
What they're not telling you as well is that the voluntary return scheme is costing you thousands of pounds at a time.
Yeah.
Because they recently said, we've finally sent a guy to Rwanda. We paid him $3,000 to go.
Right. And by the way, other European countries have much higher return rates.
Oh yeah.
So this is essentially there is some uniquely incompetent stuff going on with the Tories.
It's a choice.
Yeah. Let's be optimistic and call it incompetence.
Right.
Let's be optimistic about that. And so obviously people were just making jokes about this. Why is that doing that? People were just making jokes about this.
My favorite independent journalist.
Yeah. The right wing meme sphere was like, yep, we've got new high scores. Things are great. But actually, I mean, Sky News apparently today published this interviews with Swindon residents, because Swindon now 1 in 5 people who lives here was born abroad, which we learned in the last census. Right, 1 in 5. Now this isn't the way that things have always been. You can go back to the 2011 census, and it's something like 1 in 16 or something like that. It's been in the last 5 or 10 years that it's like a demographic bomb, and you walk through the middle of the town, and you're just like. And it's not that they're all from any one place either. They're from everywhere, literally everywhere. So it's people from all, and just like, what the hell is going on?
Well, yeah, and we do need to have a conversation about these cultural things. And I understand why Farage is just talking about prices of rents and things. But
it's easy,
but I actually think in a way we do need to have that conversation about people have a right to have slower change.
Well, let's listen to these people's opinions. I think this is very interesting. If it wants to play,
it's gone a bit too far. I think in some places in England you go to, there's more. You're kind of
in
an
one of the
outsider.
Turkish barbers.
But again, I did end up taking 2 of them on as well. They work. Their work ethic is better than most of my guys.
See, notice this guy. He can't just leave it unqualified.
Right.
Yes, but they're great people. I'm sure they are good people and whatnot. But it's still like, you can see he's like, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but, it's gone too far.
It's probably also paying them cheaper.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah, it's the power of the taboos, right? I mean...
It 100% is the power of the taboos. But it's so obvious that it's the problem.
We do need people from around the world to help with certain jobs. I live near a farming community and they're really struggling with trying to get people to come in.
How important is it?
Teenagers.
But no one, they're not going to the farms. Yeah. They're not going to the farms. They're in our town centres. People believe these narratives because they're on the media and they say, oh, well, we need it for the NHS. Okay, but that's literally less than 1/10 of the immigration. What now?
No, they're all milling about near diddly squat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's also a big question of, are they paying taxes if they're working in the black economy, number one? Yeah. Number two, a lot of public services they're using, including roads. And if you actually do the math on this, anyone who's earning below a certain level is a net drain on the public finances. And there's a great Dutch academic who's Jan van der Beek, who's done work on this.
An issue is immigration to you.
Well, I can't get a job. They come to this country and they can just get a job just like that.
So when you apply, what do they say to you?
Well, I've got a criminal record. Assault.
Yeah. How long ago?
Well, I've been out of prison now 3 years now.
And so you blame immigrants rather than your criminal record? You think?
Right. The fact that they can casually go, I hate journalists so much.
It's Sky News. They're scum.
It's such obvious scum. But okay, yeah, 3 years ago he got a criminal record. Okay, but he paid his dues in prison, and now he wants to get a job. Well, if they didn't have such an abundance of labour, then maybe they would be forced to hire the guy, and so he could rehabilitate himself and become a productive member of society again.
Yeah, but I also want to pay attention to that framing that they use. The phrase "immigrants." You're blaming immigrants because I think we have to be able to distinguish between immigrants and immigration. They're not the same thing. Actually, immigrants can be fine as individuals. And we're not blaming them as poor individuals, but immigration and the impact it has can be very negative.
And that's what he was speaking to, because he's talking about the amount of competition for the jobs. It's a buyer's market for the person who wants the labour. It's not a seller's market. And so she's like, well, you blame the immigrants rather than your criminal record. It's like, well, look, having a criminal record doesn't mean you should never be able to work again.
Right. And it's personalizing it, though, to mean like you hate this individual, these people. And that way it delegitimizes a conversation about immigration levels.
Exactly. And you're exactly right. The immigrants are just following natural incentives. Luckily, they're not bad people. They're wandering around. I mean, they're not burning things down. They seem to be perfectly okay. It's just that we didn't ask for this, and it has severe consequences that we have to live with. But anyway, we'll leave that bit there, and we'll go on to the next bit. Let's use the mouse for because it's not working. So, I mean, speaking about economics, I'm always loath to go on the immigration isn't benefiting us economically because it misses the point. Even if it was benefiting us economically, I wouldn't want my high street to look like a Baghdad bazaar. But it does. But anyway, the Centre for Policy Studies put out this very long and detailed report on how it's not. And anyone can tell just when the GDP figures come out.
We went over this a few weeks ago.
Exactly. Yeah. And they've got a huge. I mean, they're just like, look, this just hasn't worked. But probably because we're bringing in so many goddamn dependents.
Well, people from the MENAPS nations, as you were alluding to, that Dutch study, there's ones out of the Netherlands as well, and Denmark and all that. The people from Middle East, North Africa, Pakistan, and Turkey are never net tax contributors across their lifetime. Yeah. And if I don't oppose women not working and therefore not contributing in tax, but if you're mass importing middle-aged men, sort of like 18 to 50 or whatever, and they're not making positive cultural contributions, and they're also a net drain on my resources as I'm trying to have a house and have a family, no. You can all go home.
Yeah, 100%. They've got a lot of recommendations, which basically just stop immigration. You can summarize it as. But the Conservatives and Labour are just ridiculous. In fact, the Conservatives are particularly ridiculous on this, just to end this very quickly. James cleverly being like, well, Labour don't have a plan to cut legal migration. It's like, are you kidding? Are you kidding? Swella Braverman as well. Again, people I like. But the Labour aren't going to stop the boats. It's like today we found out that record number of migrants came across the channel yesterday. 882 in one day. And the thing is, the channel migrants aren't the problem by any stretch of the imagination. Tiny percentage. But it's just the stupidity of the Conservatives thinking that we don't know what's happened. We know you increased legal migration. We know you're not stopping boats coming across the channel. We know you're just allowing people to stay here indefinitely. You're not removing people who shouldn't be here. And so it's just insufferable, frankly.
And it's reflected, by the way, in the polling that people don't trust the Conservatives on immigration.
And they're right not to. And they certainly shouldn't trust Labour either.
Right.
So anyway, we'll leave that one there. Hi, folks. Thanks for watching. This is a clip from a broader podcast called The Podcast of the Lotus Eaters. It's live 1 p.m. every day UK time, Monday to Friday. And if you want to support us, you can sign up for £5 a month, help us keep the lights on, because of course we're demonetized here, and go and watch Lads Hour. Lads Hour is one of my favorite shows because it's basically, and I guess there's no easy way to describe it than calling it The View, but for men. We talk about whatever we want, but from an unabashedly masculine perspective, and we have a great time doing it. So come over and watch that.